Welcome to the greatest teacher series in the Bombadcast YouTube page. I am Scotty, and in this show we will explore all aspects of Joseph Campbell's lessons in mythology while comparing it to the modern myth of Star Wars. We will pose two questions. How does this relate to Star Wars, and how does this relate to me? The greatest teacher series premieres exclusively for our Patreon members first, so if you love this series, then join today. Special thanks to the Joseph Campbell Foundation for providing all the videos seen throughout this series. Enjoy, and remember to follow your bliss. Welcome back to The Greatest Teacher, featuring the works of Joseph Campbell. Obviously, we've had a great discussion leading up to this and looking into a lot of this stuff. And I'm excited to say we've got another additional person on here coming to give their perspective. And like I said, the point of this show is to think about what this video, what this teaching and when in any way relates to Star Wars, but also how does it relate to you personally? And we had a lot of conversations in a previous segment where we did look at how this relates to, us. How do we relate it to modern day culture? How do we relate it to modern day storytelling? So let us talk about this one. This next one is called The Slaying of the Dragon. I want to bring in Gerry, Nicky, and Alden. What's going on, fellas? You doing okay?
Oh, I'm doing great.
Oh, yeah.
Good.
I'm
Excellent.
doing great now that Gerry's here.
Hey,
That's right.
Hey,
flavor
yeah,
in here.
I had to show up eventually.
I always-
As a canon junkie, I think
Yeah.
you're
Law
going
of
to
the
love this
universe.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always
Yeah.
sort of thought of Gerry as a dragon.
That's a good way to look at it.
No, usually I get Gimli or something like that, but not a dragon.
You are really Gimli-esque.
So
Yeah.
let's break this one down. This one's pretty cool. We're gonna watch it and then we're gonna give our thoughts on it. And then once we're done doing that, we'll obviously cut into other stuff. So let's check this one out. This one's pretty cool. I watched this one yesterday. So this, like I said before, is from the Joseph Campbell Foundation, which essentially is going to be the page that posts all of his stuff and all of his work leading up to his death at the age of 89, I think, in the year 1987, I believe. So let's check this one out. This is pretty cool.
So what you're saying is if there are not dragons out there, and there may not be...
The real dragon is in you.
And what is that real dragon?
That's your ego holding you in.
What's my ego?
What I want, what I believe, what I can do, what I think I love, and all that. What I regard as the aim of my life and so forth. It might be too small. It might be that which pins you down. And if it's simply that of doing what the environment tells you to do, it certainly is pinning you down. And so the environment is your dragon as it reflects within yourself.
How do I slay
How do you?
that dragon in me? What's the journey I have to make? You have to make. Each of us has to make. You talk about something called the soul's high adventure.
My general formula for my students is follow your bliss. I mean, find where it is and don't be afraid to follow it.
Can my bliss be my life,
Well,
love, or my
it
life's
will be
work?
your
Is it my
life.
work or my life?
Well, if the work that you're doing is the work that you chose to do because you are enjoying it, that's it. But if you think, oh, gee, I couldn't do that, that's your dragon that's locking you in. Oh, no, I couldn't be a writer. Oh, no, I couldn't do what so-and-so is doing.
Unlike the classical heroes, we're not going on our journey to save the world, but to save ourselves.
And in doing that, you save the world. I mean, you do. The influence of a vital person vitalizes. There's no doubt about it. The world is a wasteland. People have the notion of saving the world by shifting it around and changing the rules and so forth. And no, any world is a living world if it's alive. And the thing is to bring it to life. And the way to bring it to life is to find in your own case where your life is and be alive yourself, it seems to me.
That's the power of the teacher, isn't it? To bring vitality to others, to make others see the vitality in them. Children.
Well, it happens. That's one of the delights of teaching. I mean, when you're not teaching in order to have an easy job, but because you really have something to teach and you love young people and you want to give what you've got found to them. And to see them come alive is the reward of teaching.
You say I have to take that journey and go down there and slay those dragons. Do I have to go alone?
If you have someone who can help you, that's fine too. But ultimately, the last trick has to be done by you.
That is a beautiful video. I'm gonna send that to my coworkers. Like that was that was awesome.
Hey,
like
everybody,
The next teacher's in service right there. It's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
slaying the
There are
dragon.
two quick things I just want to draw attention to. The part where he asks Joseph Campbell, like, what does he mean? I think by the dragon or whatever, or the ego, and he like rolled his eyes at him. He's like, oh, I gotta explain this now. And
Yeah.
What you're doing.
and then I
Yeah,
also have no idea how like fashion videos haven't snipped out that part where he's like, "How do I slay?" And
Yeah.
Oh, it's gonna happen
Yeah.
now.
Oh, honey.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's amazing. It's weird because the guy who's asking questions is Bill Moyers, and him and Bill Moyers always work together. They did a bunch of these forum interviews, kind of stuff, and he's also really smart. He's written a bunch of stuff about mythology as well. But he was one of those like Joseph Campbell super fans, kind of like George Lucas was, right?
Mhm.
And like, you know, a lot of what he did was to be a part of a bigger documentary by PBS, which is where they did the hero's journey, like a full it's like 6-hour long documentary. It's amazing. There's audio formats of it, and I think they're all on YouTube. But that being said, though, watching this clip just as a clip within itself, there's so much to digest from it. I know it's kind of a heavy one, but the first question is, how does this relate to Star Wars? Like, how can we take what was said here and relate to Star Wars? I think everyone had their own first thoughts, but since Jerry's kind of the new one, Jerry, what was your first thought? I want to hear your, because you're coming in without discussing what we discussed last time. And funny enough, Nicky and I had a great discussion off air where it was a lot of what was said in Alden too. In this clip, it was like, how do you have that realization? You know, what does it mean to slay the dragon? But Jerry, how did you relate this to Star Wars?
To Star Wars, slaying the dragon, I guess, would be I don't know, like that moment of Luke descending into the cave in Dagobah, right? You know, and him say Yoda telling him, you know, he said, what's in there? Only what you take with you. You know, you don't need your weapons and stuff like that. You know, and he goes in there ultimately, regardless of how you interpret, I guess, like kind of fails or learns, but also learns something about himself. But, you know, like it's in Star Wars, I mean, it could be literally a dragon in Star Wars that you're, you know, slaying. I mean,
True.
Din
Yeah.
Djarin did that, but
Yeah.
also I think deeply it is what, again, George intended it to be, which is again, that scene with Luke and Yoda on Dagobah and different things like that, you know, confronting the Emperor and everything, or confronting the I guess what he calls the ego, the flaws or whatever in yourself that holds you back from doing what you love or what you need to do or want to do.
Yeah.
And I don't know, Star Wars is all about that. So
It's weird, you know. Obviously, Alden and I have talked about this in great details, like what made you start podcasting, and usually the first thought should be, I've got something to say that I don't see people saying anywhere else. That should always be maybe, you know, what you should bring to the table. But ultimately, you know, he says the phrase "follow your bliss," and that's something I've been living my life by since I've actually found, like, I kind of identify with Joseph Campbell's thoughts and feelings on a very deep level, and that follow your bliss is like, I mean, I'm, like I said earlier off air, like being a teacher, like, you make very little money, you know. It's not, I'm not doing it for that. I'm doing it because obviously I have something to say and I like what I teach and I like the kids that I teach, and it has nothing to do with, like, I guess, anything financial. It has everything to do with the spirit and finding spiritual fulfillment and, you know, maybe career fulfillment.
And isn't
Alden,
that in and of itself a dragon?
yeah, and that is,
like, you have to be able to battle expectation and to be able to go down the hill and try to actually slay the idea that you should be something. Because you have those wants, you have those dreams, you have that spark inside of you that says, I'm supposed to be this, I'm supposed to be more. And here is, in whatever representation that is, this choice that is dishonest and this choice that's honest. And if that's what you wanted, you know, to be a teacher, and you chased that and you became that, to have worked against that would have been dishonest. And like, my Star Wars thought that came to my mind was a fresh one because of Andor. You know, we're recording this after the halfway point of the season. So have seen episode 6 before you listen to what I'm about to say. When he, spoilers, shoots Skeen, that's him gunning down his worst instincts. That's the other path that you could have taken. And that's like, he was this amorphous sort of directionless blob that had all this potential, but also all this bad. He was just getting to the next day, owed everybody money, was sleeping around, was irresponsible, was just raging to rage. And then you have these two paths of, okay, if you're not going to rage to rage, are you going to actually like rage against the machine, and not just in the cool music way, but like actually, or are you going to, if you're going to put your head down? And by destroying Skeen, he's finally, because you could tell he's uncomfortable because he didn't think himself somebody that would slay the dragon. Cassian is one of those people that doesn't think they're the main character, which is also something that Rey has. Like, there are people that know they're the main character. Harry Potter knows he's the main character.
Exactly.
Luke Skywalker
he's told
knows
his whole
he's the main
life.
character. Yeah.
Told his whole life. Yeah.
These people, some of them are like, but it can't be me. And Cassian has that sort of like, he's insisting that it's only for the money. He yells at everybody the day before the mission. He's in it. You know, he does that moment with Nemec where he's like, do I look grateful to you? Which is probably one of the scariest. Like he put the fear in me with that. Diego, when Diego lowers his voice, you're like, I'm sorry. But
yes, sir.
But when he has that moment of like listening to this guy say, let's betray them, let's take it, we could run away, screw them, we could split the money, I have a place, you can fly it, blah, 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 blah. Like, he's freaking out, I think, because he's like, oh my God, I do care more. And if I care more, then that means that I need to do something about the fact that I care more. It's not just about money. And if he thinks that, bam, he's got to go.
That's
like,
the challenge Luthen placed in front of him.
Yep.
It's like, do you want to keep spitting in food, or you want to do something real?
Yep. And
like,
beautiful point.
And to slay, sometimes the dragon is you. That's Dagobah Cave. That's Dark Luke. That's Rey having the potential to, like, Dark Rey, much like Vader Luke, is not a literal thing in the way that Skeen is, but she has to be able to, she doesn't defeat Dark Rey. She she actually kind of like loses their 2-second duel. Like, at least that round, she gets pushed out. But what Dark Rey is the beginning of the Kylo duel that then follows. She falters for a moment, but immediately corrects her mistake through the use of her healing power. And it's that of like, no, I can always choose a better instinct. So it's almost like it's the contradiction of Star Wars being really Star Peace, as like people point out a lot on the internet. It's a very memeable thing. Like, yes, it has wars in the name, therefore it's political, therefore it's about these conflicts, but it's also about throwing the lightsaber to the side and choosing nonviolence and choosing a better way. So you have to slay the dragons, but slaying the dragon doesn't always mean like slicing its head off. It could also mean like soothing the dragon and getting it to go away, or telling the dragon, I won't fight you. Is also that.
One thing I kind of thought about in terms of what Campbell was saying with, like, you know, sort of erasing the ego and like that being the dragon, and the way your environment has reflected in on you, and how you're able to sort of overcome those things. I think about the Han Solo journey of, you know, ancient religions, blah, 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 all hokey stuff, to then, of course, it's true, all of it, right? Like, he had to overcome what he thought was the world, what his worldview was. And he eventually gets to this place where he sees the galaxy with the largeness and the sort of this epic power. He sees it for as it is, and you know that changed his whole life. I mean, even within just A New Hope, it's you know, hokey religions to May the Force be with you, right? So I think that's something that first popped in my head when he was sort of talking about overcoming what you think the way of the world is.
And I also want to speak to that because, you know, as much as we talk about the original trilogy, a lot of the prequel trilogies that same exact way, you know, especially with Anakin, right? And a hopeful young Anakin, like the pod racing scene alone, that is him slaying the dragon. That's him getting his family out of poverty. That's him helping someone. he's doing everything he can, even at a young age, because he knows what he's going to do will inevitably and hopefully help someone in the end, even if it's selfless or if it's a selfish thing. But obviously, from a selfless perspective, is why he did it. He wanted to help Qui-Gon. He wanted to help a Jedi, and help his mother too.
Which is an interesting note, like in the first part, in the intro section, like what Nicky, you noted about how there is the monolithic structure, but like sometimes the events are swapped and sometimes it's not exact. Like by that, and I agree with it, by that formula, there is an inversion there with Anakin where he slays his first dragon before he even crosses the threshold. He doesn't leave. He hasn't entered the larger world. His first steps into the larger world are still at home. But it's that I can't just be this anymore. And for Anakin as a 9-year-old, that's, I can't be quote unquote a loser. I can't be little Annie that's never finished a race. I can't be these things. I can't just be. And then on the deeper level, I'm not just a slave. I'm a person. I have a name. I have an identity. I have friends. I'm a son. And I internalized what my mom has said. Like when he takes her lessons and puts it back on her, like, but mom, you always say, bam, here comes the theme statement for the entire saga. Here comes the thing that will take us all the way to Exegol. And episode 9 is what that kid says. And it comes early in his journey. And you will slay repeated dragons. But like we were talking about off air in our in-betweens, like a dragon is when you're working retail and you're like, I can't do this anymore. And you finally make the moment of like, I quit. Like, I quit. I'm going back to school. I quit. I'm going to go paint. I quit. I'm going to try to make an album. I quit. I'm going to start writing again. Like, it takes a lot to take a plunge of any kind. And a lot of times those crossings and those slayings are really intertwined because I mean, video games have adopted that. Like it's in the same way that the Campbellian language and Campbellian characters like Luke Skywalker became part of our language. Video game stuff has become part of our language. And we talk about it. Like we joke in our group chat and stuff like who's an NPC in your life? Who's like a mid-level boss? Like the whole idea of like a mid-level boss comes from myth. Like the idea that there's lieutenants and stuff, like Vader is a mid-level boss, which is for a period of time. Sauron for a period of time is a mid-level boss. Even Voldemort was not the original big bad. He never worked for the original big bad, but there's that idea like you get into Harry Potter and then at a certain point it's like, oh, there was somebody who was like, there's always been a Dark Lord. There was just a different one. Like there was Grindelwald and he was, don't watch those movies, just don't. But it's like it's still, it's all there.
You're slaying the dragon. I mean, it's inevitable. What you have to do, even on a small scale, like I said, that decision to either quit your job or go into your job, like there's things with that. And we've got people on the screen right now that have been through a lot these past couple of years, I mean, that goes to say everyone has, right? But like I don't mean to bring anything with Gerry up, but like I love Gerry because he's had to slay the dragon an unreal amount of times. Like I couldn't imagine being faced with so many realities that Gerry, my friend, has gone through. And like that's the next question is, how does this relate to me? Like how can we take what we learned, following your bliss can't happen instantly. Like, I
mean, he continues to log on and hang out with you. He slays the dragon every time he does that.
Every damn Thursday.
He slays
sometimes on Saturdays.
But like, I speak even to like I was never a good student until I got to college, and like that's something that I had to, on a deep personal level, come to terms with. Like, this is all on me now. Like, I'm paying for all of this. Like, this whole education, this whole experience to be a teacher, to be an educator, is all on me. And like, slaying the dragon was having to go to a chemistry class, an organic chemistry class at 8 a.m. on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and sitting through that thing and like finding some way to pass that class. It's not how I work.
Bless your heart.
And it was the hardest course of my entire life. And I wouldn't be a liar. I'm not going to lie on screen to say I didn't, load my calculator up with answers when I took that final exam. Like, that was, it's slaying the dragon is.
Oh my gosh. Hey. I just flew back to a different time. Where like, oh my God, you could do that. And they made you clear it sometimes.
Yes.
Him to a different galaxy. Like,
that's what I'm saying, because that's how our brain works too, in a beautiful way, is we obviously slay dragons. I mean, waking up and brushing your teeth, I know it sounds silly, but that is slaying the dragon. That is coming to terms that you have a whole ass day at something that maybe you don't or you do want to do, or maybe what you love to do is difficult to do. Like, there's some days when I teach y'all that, like, the lesson I'm going to teach that day, like, it's a lot of talking. It's a lot of kids, like, you just see the interest go away because it's something I have to do. It's part of my career. And like, there's other days where I wake up like, oh my God, I'm so lucky today I get to do this. You know,
and they're going to love this too. And like,
they're going to love it. Yeah.
We'll talk about it, you know, when it's more applicable, because there are obviously Campbell topics that are like,
yes,
way more about mentors than this one.
Yes.
Is. But like, there's that moment too of like, sometimes slaying the dragon from that perspective, from Obi-Wan's perspective, from Gandalf's perspective, from whoever, is the today I gotta do something hard that's gonna potentially like mess up their life. Today I gotta do something hard that they're not gonna like. Today they're gonna like me less. Today I have to abandon them. Today I have to leave them behind. Today I have to trust them. Today I have to kick them out of the nest. That's all. Like,
today I have to die and pass the baton.
Yeah, something like that. Like, we all have that, you know, and you're gonna get hit with the hard questions. Like, Scotty, how many times has a student said to you, like, when am I gonna need to know this in life? And you logically know that they're right. Like,
because there's some people, and the problem is though, you can't predict the life path of people, because there's some kids that will go on to being doctors, and they may look at me and 15 years ago, if it wasn't for your class, I wouldn't be a marine biologist. I wouldn't be involved with a nurse. I you know, I love your genetics course. I want to talk about, you know, history because of genetics. Like, and then there's other people that literally come back and I had this happen, and it literally hurt so bad. A kid came up to me and was like, you know, they straight up said, like, I didn't enjoy your class. I cheated on every test. And I was like, you don't have to tell me these things. But then again, they're kids. You know, that's how they
think it's like they think you're the machine at that point.
Yeah, and that's the part too.
They can stick it to you
and
representing something.
That's them slaying their dragon, because they're saying, hey, that thing you taught me, I never needed that. And I want to go tell my former teacher, even though they may like or not like me, whatever it is, that, hey, I hate your thing. And that's,
and look, we're all
their personal dragon.
We're all in our 20s and 30s on this call.
Yeah.
We're young guys. We remember that shit vividly. I would be lying if I said that there were not teachers I wanted to dunk on. But also on the other end, there are teachers that I know I am employing what they said to me every day, at least like two or three of them that I'm lucky to have friendships with, that I could text right now if I wanted to, like, that I'm like, I would not, if it wasn't for that English class where this was said, or this was done, or this was how we did it, I wouldn't be as good of a broadcaster. I wouldn't be as good as an analyst or anything like that. But at the same time, there is sort of like a, you know, like the esteemed lawyer. She's a lawyer, Katie J-Ro, who, you know, if you're lucky enough to have her on Facebook, when she got her job recently, her new position, was it the position or the school?
It was law school.
It was law school. It was the law school to get in.
It was to get in.
When she got into law school, and she said like that there was that manager that had told her like, you won't make it as a waitress. She's like, yeah, I didn't. You're right. I didn't make it as a waitress. I did all this. And sometimes you got to stick it to those people. And sometimes it sucks to be that person. Yeah. And in the case of children, it's like that child will probably in a couple of years be like, I shouldn't have been a dick to me.
Or completely forget that they even said that. And that's part of it too. Like, there was times, you know, and this goes with friends, and I went through a horrible like argument recently with a friend that ended up resulting in losing a friendship out of it. And I'm here
contractually obligated. It was
you too? Oh no.
Unfortunately for that person, that was them slaying their dragon, and me slaying my dragons, having to live my life without them. Like that, and maybe it might help me in the end. It might be more difficult, but it's inevitable. Like, that this myth doesn't always just pertain to, you know, I watched Rings of Power and I get it, you know, it's never about getting it on like a surface level. It always should be.
It's always what it means.
Yes.
And that's not to say that every, you know, people listening to this could be like, so what, are they saying everything I do is slaying the dragon? No, I'm not saying that either.
No,
because there are some tasks that are distractions. There are some tasks that are dishonest.
Yes. I was gonna like just ask the same thing, where it's like, can you slay the wrong dragon and then that go into the conversation we had previously about the greatest teacher failure is.
Yeah,
failure,
right.
or
Yeah.
like think about someone, Nicky, like that we talked about in part 1. Think about Aragorn. Like,
Yeah.
think about all the great deeds. So many, tons. The guy was already like the movies have to streamline it to be movies, but like the guy was already in his 80s and was a legend and already in the land, as Strider, as Estelle, as Aragorn, as all these things. His name is spoken in hushed tones before the mission even starts. But those weren't the things he's supposed to be doing. And that's the thing. Like, I could have gone, instead of doing what I do professionally, I could have gone like I considered. There were times where I was like, maybe I'll just get into sales. I could talk to people. And I probably could have crushed it. That's not slaying a dragon. So we're not saying that every task is. Because that's like Nicky, you worked in a store. You probably could have managed that store and become the district manager of that whole thing. Probably fairly easily, to be honest. And like you still would have been entirely unfulfilled.
Yeah. Definitely.
It is ultimately about what you get out of it. And that's the same thing with storytelling. Does anyone else have any last minute thoughts about, what this means to me?
Well, just
Jerry, what's
slaying, what's that? Well, slaying a dragon, again, like you say, like it could be, you can fail at it miserably. Yeah. Like we were saying a minute ago, Alden was saying, not everything is a dragon and things like that. And sometimes, like Scotty, you're talking about the mutual thing you had with a friend just recently, where you kind of lost. Like there are moments with people like that where it's like you failed miserably.
Yes,
like you may have thought you were doing that, but you went the opposite direction with it. But just honestly, I have not much more to add except for that. Regardless of if your dragon is something you should or shouldn't be doing, you got to take that step out there and try to do it, I guess. And maybe if you shouldn't be doing it, don't slay that dragon. I guess. This is Gerry just condoning anything, I guess. So yeah,
so good. But it's weird. It's figuring out what the dragon is in the first place. That maybe should have been
that's the hardest
topic.
part.
Yeah,
that's the hardest part.
What is the dragon? Like, this is, to me, what we're doing right now is not slaying the dragon, right? We're having a discussion about what it means, but at no point did I approach this conversation or this whole entire thing thinking it was going to change the outcome of my life, or that what we're doing is going to change the outcome of my life. I mean, you never know. It could, but at no point, sometimes the dragon isn't totally understandable at first. Like y'all were saying, like sometimes you have to fight this dragon metaphorically, and then you overcome whatever it was, and you realize to yourself, oh my God, that was the fight the whole time. I didn't know I was going through the fight.
And that's a frustrating one. Was anybody else? Did anybody else have The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho on their curriculums in high school? That might be it.
School, so they don't like any kind of alchemy or anything.
That's too much of a Latin name for your school anyway, Jerry. This might be like an age bracket thing, because like again, we're all in the same age group, but it's that like that and those couple years in between that bump everybody down into the next, like, like that book has one of those endings that frustrated me so much in 9th grade. And I was close with all my English teachers because, you always have the subject that you gravitate towards and stuff. And I remember telling this teacher, Miss Yanas, who I love, and I was like, this is lame. And she's like, what don't you like about it? And it has one of those like you had it the whole time type ones. Like, oh, the whole journey, and then he literally goes all the way back to his home, and I was like, the hell, like this is, but I was already like, I hadn't internalized some of the stuff that I already loved because Luke went back home and Frodo went back home and all these people, so like it was there. It was just a frustrating moment of feeling like I couldn't accept that was just as valid. And like I talk often and at any opportunity about how much I love Frozen 2, and we were doing that recently with our friend Michael, who just watched it for the first time. And the whole idea of show yourself is that there is no answer out there for Elsa that's just going to be like, all of a sudden I understand it, because you choose, which is a big thing in Rings of Power, which is a big thing in the Nolan Batmans. And there's a quote here that Kevin Smith tweeted out. He tweeted this in 2011, and I've had it accessible at either I've sent it to myself in my DMs or I've bookmarked it or whatever. I've always been able to get to it. I think he said he doesn't know who said it, but he heard it from someone else. And it's like, I think it's like a Chinese thing, a Chinese proverb thing, that to be great is to go on, To go on is to go far. To go far is to return.
Wow.
And once I thought about that, and I was like, maybe there was a good point to The Alchemist. Like maybe that's what it was. Maybe it's just about saying suddenly I can go home without feeling like I need to break out of home. Now I have a control over my home.
Wow.
Which I think is a different thing about youth. Like you're like, I gotta get out of here. I feel so suffocated. But then a lot of the times when you go back, the suffocation is gone, and you're like, there's my old hangout spot. And that perspective, it takes a lot of dragon scales that you collect along the way, and not the cool ass dragon tails ones that let you transport yourself and shit. It takes the spiritual ones to
yes,
be
it
able to do
does.
that.
It really does, though, and that's a hard thing with coming to terms with your past, because some people have pretty hard past to have to realize and come to terms with, you know, not just as a person, but maybe what you went through, and slaying the dragon of an emotional thing is very much real and very raw. And you know, hopefully this little segment allowed you to maybe think about yourself and what you've been through before we lead into our next one. So yeah, this was great. Should we keep doing plugs? I think we could. If y'all want to, I'm fine with that. Because
The plugs are gonna get so lazy by the end.
Scotty, in lieu of a plug, can I bring up one more point about dragon slaying? Okay, so I was just sort of thinking as we were coming at the end. I think a lot about the quote from Rebels when Yoda's talking about like it's not just about fighting, it's about how you choose to fight. And I think when we were then sort of relating it back to life and as podcasters, and you said, you know, recording this is not slaying the dragon, like making an episode is not slaying the dragon. And I thought about that more, and how like that's true, and how, you know, if we make some really super awesome episode of a podcast, we didn't slay any dragons, but I think we did the slaying before when we chose how we were going to chose how and what we were going to make. I think there's this idea of when we're going to come out into the world and we're going to discuss stories and we're going to discuss writers and characters and all of it, we have to make a hard choice. How are we going to do it? And I think you can do it in a really toxic way that unfortunately makes people a lot of money, or you can do it in a way that's super honest. And I think it's so like, while making an episode is not this big hump you overcome, I think when we started all of our respective shows, we slayed a dragon and saying, this is the tenor of our conversation, this is the way we're going to approach things, and we're going to stick by it. And so I just think that's sort of my, how does it relate to Star Wars and how does it relate to us? Because like we chose how to do this fight, and we chose our way. And I think that's where like the super honorable, like sort of hero's journey thing manifests in just talking.
That's beautifully stated, because it ultimately is, right? Like you were saying, as much as, and then I also mentioned this, as much as we love doing this, you know, there is a challenge of doing this, you know, and not just this conversation, but our own respective things. That's beautifully stated, Nicky. It is within itself a form of slaying the dragon, but some things shouldn't be, you know, some things just shouldn't be, you know, like how food tastes should, I almost think it should never, that doesn't mean you slayed the dragon, you know what I mean? Like, you know, when you order a meal at a restaurant, you know, and you maybe do or do not like it, you're not slaying the dragon. I mean, there's like, it's weird. It's difficult. It's a difficult,
and it can inflate your hubris almost. Like, not to keep this going for another hour, but like, you know, because it's us. But like there is a, how do I say this in a not shitty way? There is an attitude that happens, and Nicky knows exactly what I'm talking about. Like, where people are like, they act so burdened by things, and it happens a lot in like digital media. Like, I have to cover this show. I don't know why I'm still writing about it. I don't like it. Like, oh, it's finally good again. It's like, well, then why don't you quit? Why don't you quit? Do yourself the favor and us. Just go. No one will shame you for that. Like, in terms of like we were covering Rings of Power, and Rachel Cushing Levine, who's like an excellent, amazing editor and is a Tolkien expert. She's like, look, at the end of the day, the books are still there. If you don't like this, stop. Read the books. Like you, and that's not those types of like, oh, can't believe I have to, like, the second that you surrender unnecessary have tos in life is a powerful moment. That's slaying a dragon. But being like, I wrote my review for the show that I don't even want to be watching, that's not slaying a dragon. That's bullshit. And like the everybody has, like, I had to learn, like, I didn't think these shows were going to come up on this, but it was the CW Arrowverse that finally pushed me toward not being a completionist anymore, because there was a time in my life where I was like,
I haven't had that yet.
I gotta watch all of them. I gotta keep up with
I'm
everything.
mad about that too.
And I do that with a lot of stuff. Like High Republic, I'm a completionist because I like it all. But it was Arrow season 4 where I was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't.
It became a task, and that's the thing. Like, following your bliss, it doesn't necessarily mean, you know, that's how you make financial money and that's how you are happy. But like, following your bliss can be your hobbies. You know,
you have to choose
like
joy. Like if you see a show piling up in your, I was gonna say on your DVR, but I guess not even really anymore. But like if you see like a bunch of unwatched on that streaming service, and you're like, that's probably, it's okay to say that one's not for me. There's more growth in that than the I have to power through.
Exactly. Exactly. I agree.
Well, and just real quick before we go off, talking about how the dragon, like how it pertains to you and everything, just 2 points that I've been kind of mulling around over here in my beanie covered head.
Hell yeah.
It's hard to slay the dragon when you don't know what's in front of you, is one thing. And there are times when it can be right in front of you and you don't know it's there. Figuring out what the dragon is very hard. But also, let me see. How was I going to put this second one? Oh man, I don't know. Just I guess go on that first one for a minute because I've lost the other one. Because
I agree though.
This beanie keeps the thoughts in, and sometimes they bounce off.
You gotta dragon to slay in your head.
Like 30 minutes later, and I'll say, "Oh wait, it's this." But no, I've just been going very more existential in all of this, you know. And you could talk about like of course, we all do this because we love it and everything like that. And there are the dragons of, you know, I want to say something that's meaningful and things like that. You know, I want to make sure I'm not putting my conversation out there that's going to be like damaging to whatever I'm wanting to talk about. But just from a personal perspective of just, you know, figuring out what that is can be a dragon in and of itself. Figuring out what your dragon is can even be a dragon, which I guess I'm as a hat on a hat maybe, but you know, no, it's because I know I've struggled with a lot of kind of stuff like that, you know. Like you can have something in your presence. You can have the very dragon in your presence and not realize that it's a dragon.
That's the problem,
right?
That's the problem. Yeah,
that is very difficult. And again, I'm getting very real world and things like that, but that's
fair.
That is something that I'm all around, you know, stuff like that. Because I again, these themes are very. You can put them. They're universal, but not in the respect that they mean nothing. They're like just a blanket you can drape over any bones and it makes sense, but it is like a framework that is helpful in a lot of situations, I feel like. And so but yeah, no, that's something I struggle with, I think, is the actually realizing what the actual dragon is, that it can be right in front of me, and I don't even know. So, again, I'm going to keep it going for another hour, I guess.
No.
Bringing up the existential.
The previous segment got into this, and I obviously know this wasn't posted or anything prior to this, but like we discussed a lot of like, you know, what it takes to, you know, work yourself into a motif of the hero's journey and what all of that means, and like the task of getting rid of the negative or whatever it is that's stopping you from being your fullest self is within itself the dragon. So you're right, Gerry. I mean, it's all within and without. I mean, that's kind of what Campbell, that's why I like talking about this stuff with people that obviously understand it and they want to discuss it further, is because this is ultimately what it is. It's all about, you know, what you can get out of this story and what you can get out of these teachings that are not just, and I keep coming back to it, that are not just mythologically a part of us, but biologically a part of this, right? Like we are biologically designed to stop things within ourselves, like pathogens or anything. Like if you're having a heart attack, your brain does things to make sure other parts of the body don't get affected by that shit. It's like truly like
That's why no matter how many times throughout the week I say, just kill me. It never
Yeah.
happens.
no, it'll never happen.
And ultimately, you're glad that it doesn't. You're like, ultimately, you're like, hey, you know, okay, like, yeah, I wanted one more. I wanted
Checks
at
and
least one more.
balances.
like it was said, even just waking up some days is slaying the dragon. And I guess we're going to end on that.
That
And
was my other one.
Okay,
is
here we go.
That there's a lot of dragons that you have to constantly wake up every day and slay. Every day.
Yeah.
You wake up and
They're
make
more
you have to
hydras
make
in
the
that
physical
way.
choice. Yeah, more of a hydra, but yeah, you wake up and it is like an everyday. I have to choose. I'm gonna slay this dragon today. Sometimes it wins too, but you know, it's the nature of things. So but yeah, that was my other one. I'm glad I remember that before I was like in the shower or something like later going like, damn, it was that. This is a good point. So
that was awesome. Well, this has been an episode of The Greatest Teacher, segment of it as well. We'll be going to some more things. Not quite sure if Nicky and Alden will be bouncing or joining for the next segment. I know Gerry's got a little bit more time, but thank you for joining everyone. And as always, stay Bombad and follow your bliss.